I was sitting at my usual corner table at Brewster's Coffee, scrolling through morning emails on my phone when she appeared. A stunning brunette in a navy business suit walked straight toward me with the confidence of someone who owned every room she entered. Her designer handbag swayed with each purposeful step, and a wedding ring caught the morning light streaming through the windows. Without asking permission, she slid into the seat directly across from me. "Your wife is seeing my husband," she stated with the casual tone someone might use to comment on the weather. My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips as my brain struggled to process what I'd just heard. My hands started trembling as I set down my cup coffee sloshing onto the wooden table. "Excuse me? I think you have the wrong person." The woman reached into her leather purse and pulled out a manila folder. "Martin Thompson, 32 years old, marketing manager at TechSphere Solutions. Lives at 427 Maple Street in Littleton. Married to Emma Thompson for 6 years." She opened the folder and slid a photograph across the table. "Is this your wife?" The image showed Emma locked in a passionate kiss with a tall man outside the Grand Hyatt downtown. Her hands were tangled in his dark hair, her body pressed against his in a way that made my stomach lurch. I recognized the blue dress she'd worn last Thursday when she said she was meeting her book club. "I'm Sarah Martinez." The woman continued, her green eyes never leaving my face. "The man your wife is kissing is my husband, Dr. James Richardson. He's a cardiologist at Presbyterian St. Joseph Hospital." I stared at the photo, then at Sarah, then back at the photo. This could be anyone. This could be photoshopped. Sarah reached into the folder again and produced a stack of additional photographs. Emma and the same man entering the hotel lobby. Emma and him sharing an intimate dinner at Romano's, the Italian place where Emma had taken me for our anniversary 3 years ago. Emma and him walking hand in hand through Washington Park, laughing at something he'd whispered in her ear. Hotel receipts. Sarah said, sliding more documents toward me. Restaurant bills. All paid for by my dear husband's credit card. Every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 3 months. My vision blurred as I studied the evidence. Tuesday and Thursday evenings when Emma claimed she was attending book club meetings or working late on client presentations for her marketing firm. The nights she'd come home smelling like expensive wine and making excuses about why she wasn't hungry for dinner. "How did you get all this?" I managed to ask. "James got careless. Started leaving receipts in his car, taking calls from her when I was in the room. When I hired a private investigator, I discovered he'd been documenting their affair for his own protection." Sarah leaned back in her chair. "Apparently, my husband has trust issues when it comes to extramarital relationships. Ironic, isn't it?" I felt like I was drowning. 6 years of marriage, 6 years of believing Emma when she said she loved me, when she talked about our future together, when she made plans for us to start a family next year. All of it built on lies and deception. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. Sarah's expression shifted, becoming harder somehow. "Because James destroyed my marriage. Emma destroyed yours. They get to have their fun while we sit at home like fools believing their stories about working late in book clubs." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Why should they be the only ones enjoying themselves?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, Martin, that you and I are both intelligent, attractive adults who've been betrayed by the people we trusted most. James thinks he's so clever sneaking around with your wife while I pretend not to notice. Emma thinks you're too trusting to ever catch on." Sarah reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. Her skin was warm and soft. "But we're not going to be victims anymore." My heart hammered against my ribcage. Sarah was beautiful in a way that made it hard to concentrate. Her dark hair fell in perfect waves around her shoulders, and her business suit couldn't hide her athletic figure. When she smiled, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months' desire. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that turnabout is fair play." Sarah pulled a business card from her purse and slid it across the table. Text me tonight if you want revenge that actually feels good. I picked up the card. Sarah Martinez, commercial real estate broker. Below her name was a phone number written in elegant handwriting. I need time to process this, I said. Of course you do. Sarah stood up and smoothed down her skirt. But don't take too long, Martin. Every day you wait is another day they're laughing at how gullible we are. She walked away without looking back, leaving me alone with the photographs and the horrible realization that my marriage was a lie. I sat there for another hour studying every detail of the images, searching for some explanation that would make this all a misunderstanding. But the evidence was overwhelming. Emma's face in the photos showed a happiness and passion I hadn't seen directed at me in over a year. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Running late for work, grabbing breakfast on the way. Love you. I stared at her message, remembering how she'd kissed my cheek that morning before heading upstairs to shower. Had she been thinking about him even then? Had she been comparing us, finding me lacking? I drove to work in a daze, barely managing to focus on the marketing presentation I was supposed to deliver that afternoon. My colleagues asked if I was feeling well. I told them I might be coming down with something which wasn't entirely a lie. I felt sick to my core. That evening, Emma came home at her usual time carrying takeout from our favorite Thai restaurant. She chattered about her day, asked about mine, and snuggled against me on the couch while we watched television. Everything seemed normal, which made it all the more devastating. How could she act so natural when she was living a double life? After Emma fell asleep, I crept out to the garage and stared at Sarah's business card. My thumb hovered over my phone's keypad for 10 minutes before I finally typed, "We need to talk." Her response came immediately. "Tomorrow 7 p.m., the Wine Loft on 16th Street. Come alone." I deleted both messages and went back inside. But sleep wouldn't come. I lay awake listening to Emma breathe beside me, wondering how long she'd been lying to my face and what else she might be hiding. The next day crawled by with excruciating slowness. I found myself analyzing every interaction with Emma from the past 3 months, searching for clues I'd missed. The way she'd started taking her phone into the bathroom when she showered. How she'd become suddenly interested in working out and had bought expensive new lingerie she claimed was just for her own confidence. The mysterious charges on our credit card for lunches at restaurants I'd never been to. Emma left work early that Thursday, claiming she had a book club meeting. I knew now where she was really going, and the knowledge felt like acid in my stomach. At 6:30, I told her I was meeting an old college friend for drinks and drove downtown to the Wine Loft. Sarah was already there, seated at a corner table, wearing a black dress that hugged her curves. She'd chosen a spot that was both intimate and discreet, away from the main dining area. When she saw me approaching, she smiled in a way that made my pulse quicken. "You came," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her. I had to know more. I sat down and accepted the glass of wine she'd already ordered for me. This whole situation is insane. Insanity is pretending everything is fine when your spouse is screwing someone else. Sarah took a sip of her wine. I've been living in denial for months, making excuses for James's behavior, believing his lies about hospital emergencies and medical conferences. How did you find out for certain? James got sloppy. Started getting calls from Emma during dinner claiming it was the hospital. But I could hear a woman's voice in the background when he answered. So I started paying attention. Sarah opened her purse and pulled out a small notebook. James leaves for work at 7:15 every morning. He's supposed to be at the hospital by 8, but the drive only takes 20 minutes. I started following him. You followed your own husband. 3 mornings a week, James stops at Brewster's Coffee for exactly 23 minutes. The same coffee shop where you go every morning at 7:30. Sarah's eyes locked on mine. I've been watching you for 2 weeks, Martin. Learning your routine, figuring out the best way to approach you. A chill ran down my spine. You've been watching me. I needed to know what kind of man my husband was destroying. I needed to know if you were complicit or just another victim. Sarah leaned forward. You're a good man, Martin. You hold doors for strangers, you tip your barista generously. You call your mother every Sunday morning. You deserve better than Emma. The revelation that she'd been observing me should have frightened me, but instead I felt oddly flattered. When was the last time someone had paid such close attention to my daily life? Emma certainly hadn't noticed my habits or preferences in years. "This is crazy," I said, but I didn't get up to leave. Crazy is staying married to someone who lies to your face every day. Sarah reached across the table and touched my hand. "I've done my research on you, Martin. You're kind, loyal, hardworking. You've been faithful to Emma despite the fact that she stopped appreciating you months ago. How could you possibly know that?" "Because I recognize the signs. The way you carry yourself like you're apologizing for taking up space. The way you dress like you're trying to be invisible. When someone stops loving you, it changes how you see yourself." Sarah's voice softened. "James used to make me feel that way. Worthless. Boring. Lucky to have him." I found myself studying Sarah's face, the way her eyes reflected the candlelight, the elegant curve of her neck. She was right about Emma making me feel invisible. When had my wife stopped noticing when I got a haircut or bought new clothes? When had she stopped laughing at my jokes or asking about my dreams? "What do you want from me?" I asked. "I want to remind you what it feels like to be desired. I want to show you that you're worthy of passion and attention and respect." Sarah's fingers traced circles on the back of my hand. "And I want James and Emma to know exactly how it feels to be betrayed." "You want us to have an affair." "I want us to take back our power." Sarah signaled the waitress for another bottle of wine. "They think we're pathetic. They think we'll never find out, and even if we do, we'll be too weak to do anything about it. I refuse to be weak." The wine was making me bold, or maybe it was Sarah's proximity, the way she looked at me like I was the most interesting man in the room. "What did you have in mind?" "Dinner tomorrow night, somewhere expensive and public, somewhere Emma might see us if she happens to be out with James." Sarah smiled. "Or we could go somewhere private and intimate. Your choice." I thought about Emma probably at that very moment sharing a hotel room with Dr. James Richardson, laughing about how naive her husband was. I thought about 6 years of marriage, 6 years of believing I was building a life with someone who loved me. 6 years of being made a fool. "Somewhere intimate," I said. Sarah's smile widened. "I know just the place." We finished the bottle of wine while Sarah told me about her marriage. 8 years with James, who'd grown increasingly controlling and dismissive. He criticized her career, her friends, even her cooking. He made her feel like she should be grateful he'd chosen her, as if she wasn't successful and beautiful and intelligent in her own right. "He treats me like an accessory," Sarah said. "Something to look good at hospital functions and charity events. But Emma makes him feel young and exciting. She laughs at his jokes and tells him how brilliant he is." Emma always said she wanted someone more ambitious, I admitted. Someone who'd challenge her intellectually. Emma wanted someone with more money and status. James fits that bill perfectly. Sarah finished her wine. "But here's what Emma doesn't know about her brilliant doctor. James has some very expensive habits that his salary doesn't quite cover." "What do you mean?" "I mean my dear husband has been supplementing his income in creative ways, ways that might interest the state medical board." Sarah glanced around to make sure no one was listening. "But that's a conversation for another time." She paid the bill despite my protests, and we walked out into the cool Denver evening. The downtown streets were busy with couples heading to dinner and groups of friends bar hopping. I felt like I was seeing the city through new eyes, noticing details I'd missed before. "Friday night," Sarah said as we reached our cars. 7 o'clock. Text me your address and I'll pick you up." "I'll be working late that night." I said automatically, then realized what I was doing. I'll tell Emma I'm working late." "Good." Sarah stood on her tiptoes and kissed my cheek, her lips lingering just long enough to send electricity through my entire body. "It's time you started living for yourself, Martin. I drove home with my head spinning. Emma was already asleep when I got there, and I was grateful not to have to look her in the eyes. I lay awake most of the night, alternating between guilt and excitement. What I was planning was wrong, but didn't. I deserved to feel wanted. Didn't I deserve to experience passion after months of Emma's indifference? By morning, I'd convinced myself that I wasn't the one destroying our marriage. Emma had already done that. I was just finally opening my eyes. Friday arrived with unseasonable warmth for late October. I spent the day distracted at work, barely able to concentrate on client presentations and budget meetings. My assistant asked twice if everything was all right, and I realized I'd been staring out the window for 10-minute stretches without responding to emails. At 4 o'clock, I texted Emma that I'd be working late on the Morrison account and wouldn't be home until after 10. Her response was immediate. "No problem, book club is discussing that new thriller tonight anyway. Might run late too. Love you. Book club." The lie came so easily to her now. I wondered if she even remembered what books her fictional club was supposed to be reading. I left the office at 5:30 and drove home to change clothes. Emma's car wasn't in the driveway, which meant she'd already left for her meeting with Dr. Richardson. I found myself standing in our bedroom staring at the bed we shared, wondering how many nights she'd lain there planning her escapes. I showered and put on my best suit, the charcoal gray one Emma had helped me pick out for my company's holiday party 2 years ago. She'd said I looked handsome in it, that it brought out my eyes. The memory stung, but I pushed it away. Tonight wasn't about Emma. Sarah texted at 6:45. "Outside when you're ready." I looked out the front window and saw her leaning against a silver BMW wearing a red dress that took my breath away. The color was striking against her dark hair, and the cut of the dress showcased her figure without being inappropriate. She looked like a woman who knew exactly how beautiful she was. I grabbed my wallet and keys, locked the house, and walked toward her car. Sarah smiled as I approached, and I felt that same electric attraction I'd experienced at the wine bar. "You clean up nicely," she said, running her eyes appreciatively over my suit. "You look incredible." "Thank you." Sarah opened the passenger door for me. "I thought we'd go to Mercantile. Have you been—" I shook my head. Mercantile was one of Denver's most exclusive restaurants, the kind of place that required reservations weeks in advance and cost more for one meal than Emma and I typically spent on groceries in a week. "James took me there for our anniversary last year," Sarah continued as she drove through downtown traffic. "The food is exceptional, and the atmosphere is perfect for intimate conversation." The restaurant was everything I'd expected: dim lighting, white tablecloths, and a wine list that read like a novel. Sarah had somehow secured a corner table with a view of the city lights beginning to twinkle in the gathering darkness. Our server treated her like a valued regular customer, addressing her by name and recommending wine pairings with obvious familiarity. "Do you come here often?" I asked after we'd ordered. "James and I used to, before he started spending all his free time with your wife." Sarah's expression hardened momentarily, then softened. "But tonight isn't about them. Tonight is about us getting to know each other as people, not just as victims of their selfishness." Over dinner, Sarah told me about her work in commercial real estate, how she'd built a successful career representing developers and business owners throughout the Denver metro area. She was clearly intelligent and ambitious, with a sharp wit that kept me engaged and laughing despite the circumstances that had brought us together. "What about you?" she asked as we shared a chocolate dessert. "What do you love about marketing?" It had been so long since anyone had asked me about my passions that I stumbled over my answer at first. Emma used to be interested in my work, but over the past year our conversations had devolved into logistics: who was picking up groceries, whose turn it was to call the plumber, whether we should refinance the mortgage. "I love the psychology of it," I finally said. "Understanding what motivates people to make decisions, what speaks to them on an emotional level. It's like solving puzzles about human nature." "That's fascinating. Do you think you could read me?" I studied Sarah's face in the candlelight. "I think you're someone who's been underestimated your whole life. You're stronger and smarter than people give you credit for, and you're tired of letting others define your worth. Sarah's eyes widened. That's remarkably accurate. Your husband made you feel small, didn't he? Made you question your own judgment and abilities. James has a way of making everyone around him feel inferior. It's part of his charm, apparently. Sarah reached across the table and took my hand. Emma does the same thing to you. Doesn't she make you feel like you should be grateful she chose you? I nodded, surprised by how clearly Sarah could see my situation. She used to build me up. When we first met, she said I was the smartest, funniest, most considerate man she'd ever known. But somewhere along the way, I became ordinary to her. Predictable. You're not ordinary, Martin. You're thoughtful and genuine and loyal. Emma is a fool if she can't see that. The intensity in Sarah's voice made my chest tight with emotion. When was the last time someone had defended me so fiercely? When was the last time someone had seen my good qualities instead of focusing on my shortcomings? After dinner, Sarah suggested we go back to her house for coffee. James was working late at the hospital, she explained, and wouldn't be home until after midnight. The drive to her neighborhood took us through some of Denver's most expensive areas, past houses with circular driveways and manicured lawns. Sarah's house was a modern architectural masterpiece, all clean lines and floor-to-ceiling windows. The interior was decorated with expensive contemporary art and furniture that looked like it belonged in a design magazine. Everything was perfect, from the marble countertops in the kitchen to the hardwood floors that gleamed under strategically placed lighting. "This is incredible," I said, following her into the living room. James insisted on hiring a decorator. He said my taste was too pedestrian for a house this size. Sarah kicked off her heels and poured 2 glasses of wine from an open bottle on the coffee table. I wasn't allowed to choose anything except the towels in the guest bathroom. That must have been frustrating. Everything about my marriage has been frustrating. Sarah handed me a wine glass and sat beside me on the leather couch. But I didn't bring you here to complain about James. Why did you bring me here? Instead of answering, Sarah opened her laptop and pulled up a series of files. I want to show you something about your wife's lover. The screen displayed what appeared to be financial records, bank statements, credit card bills, and medical billing documents. I recognized James Richardson's name at the top of several pages. What am I looking at? Proof that Dr. James Richardson has been supplementing his income by billing insurance companies for procedures he never performed. Sarah scrolled through page after page of documentation. Phantom surgeries, fake consultations, non-existent follow-up appointments. He's been stealing money from insurance companies and Medicare for over 2 years. I stared at the screen, trying to process what she was showing me. How did you get this? James keeps everything on his home computer. He thinks because he's the only one who understands medical terminology, I wouldn't notice what he was doing. Sarah's voice was cold with anger. He's stolen over $600,000, Martin. Money that should go to patients who actually need medical care. This is fraud. This could send him to prison. Exactly. Sarah closed the laptop and set it aside. James thinks he's untouchable because he's a respected doctor. He thinks no one would believe his devoted wife could possibly understand his business well enough to expose him. What are you planning to do? That depends on you. Sarah moved closer to me on the couch, her hand resting on my thigh. I could turn this over to the authorities and let James face the consequences alone. Or we could work together to make sure both of them pay for what they've done to us. I felt her warmth beside me, smelled her perfume, and struggled to think clearly. What do you mean? I mean, we could expose their affair at the same time we expose James's crimes. Maximum humiliation for both of them. Sarah's fingers traced along my arm. Emma works in marketing, doesn't she? How do you think her clients would react to learning she's been sleeping with a married doctor who's under investigation for insurance fraud? The idea was simultaneously terrifying and appealing. Emma had always been so careful about her professional reputation, so concerned with maintaining her image as an ethical businesswoman. Being connected to a scandal like this would destroy everything she'd worked to build. I don't know if I could do that, I said. Sarah leaned closer, her lips almost touching my ear. Martin, they've been laughing at us for months. They think we're too stupid to figure out what they're doing, too weak to fight back. Don't you want to prove them wrong? Her breath against my skin sent shivers down my spine. I turned to look at her, and suddenly we were inches apart, her green eyes searching mine. When she kissed me, it was soft at first, tentative, giving me the chance to pull away. But I didn't want to pull away. I wanted to feel desired, wanted to feel alive again. The kiss deepened and Sarah's hands tangled in my hair. I pulled her closer, marveling at how different she felt from Emma, how she responded to my touch with enthusiasm instead of obligation. When we broke apart, both of us were breathing hard. "Stay with me tonight," Sarah whispered. I thought about Emma probably at that very moment in bed with James Richardson. I thought about 6 years of marriage, 6 years of believing in a future that was built on lies. I thought about how long it had been since my wife had looked at me with desire instead of tolerance. "Yes," I said. Sarah led me upstairs to the master bedroom, which was decorated in cool blues and grays that reflected James's sterile aesthetic. But I stopped thinking about the decor the moment Sarah turned in my arms and began unbuttoning my shirt. Her touch was electric, confident, completely focused on me in a way that made me feel like the most important person in her world. We made love with a passion I'd forgotten was possible, losing ourselves in each other's bodies and the sweet revenge of forbidden pleasure. Afterward, as we lay tangled in sheets that smelled like Sarah's perfume, she traced patterns on my chest with her fingertip. "I recorded everything," she said quietly. I stiffened. "What do you mean?" "I have security cameras throughout the house. James installed them after a break-in last year, but he doesn't know I have access to the recordings." Sarah propped herself up on one elbow to look at me. "Everything we just did is documented, time-stamped, stored on a secure server." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because now you're part of my plan, whether you want to be or not." Sarah's expression was unreadable. "James and Emma aren't the only ones who can play games, Martin. The difference is, I'm better at them than they are." I sat up, suddenly feeling exposed and vulnerable. "Are you blackmailing me?" "I'm protecting us both. When this all comes out, we need to control the narrative. We need to make sure everyone knows we were driven to this by their betrayal, that we're the victims who found comfort in each other." Sarah sat up beside me, pulling the sheet around herself. "Trust me, Martin. I know what I'm doing." Looking at her in the dim light filtering through the bedroom windows, I realized I'd underestimated Sarah Martinez. She wasn't just a wounded wife seeking comfort. She was a strategist, someone who thought 3 moves ahead while the rest of us were still figuring out the rules of the game. And I was now completely at her mercy. The following week passed in a haze of guilt, excitement, and growing unease. I went through the motions of normal life, attending meetings, reviewing marketing campaigns, making small talk with colleagues who had no idea my entire world had shifted. But underneath the facade, I felt like I was living in a spy novel, conducting a secret affair, while gathering evidence against my cheating wife. Sarah had given me a key to James's medical office, explaining that she'd made a copy months ago when she first suspected his infidelity. Our plan was to break in during the weekend when the building would be empty and copy his patient files and financial records. The idea terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. "Are you sure about this?" I asked Sarah as we sat in her car outside the medical building on Saturday evening. The parking garage was deserted except for a security guard's vehicle on the first level. "James keeps everything on his office computer. Patient records, billing information, appointment schedules. If we're going to expose his fraud, we need more than just the financial documents I found at home." Sarah checked her watch. "The security guard makes his rounds every 2 hours. We have exactly 90 minutes to get in and out." "How do you know his schedule?" "I've been planning this for longer than you realize, Martin." Sarah handed me a small flashlight and a USB drive. "James has been stealing money from sick people for over 2 years. He deserves to face consequences. We took the elevator to the 8th floor where James shared office space with 3 other cardiologists. Sarah seemed to know exactly where she was going, leading me down a hallway lined with medical diplomas and generic landscape paintings. The building's security system had been easier to bypass than I'd expected, with Sarah producing a key card that she claimed belonged to one of James's colleagues. "How did you get that?" I'd asked. Dr. Peterson owed James a favor. James asked to borrow it for some research project, then had me return it the next day. I had a copy made first. Sarah's preparedness was both impressive and unsettling. James's office was exactly what I'd expected. Leather furniture, mahogany desk walls covered with medical degrees and awards. Family photos showed him and Sarah at various charity events and hospital functions, both of them smiling for cameras while their marriage slowly disintegrated. Sarah went straight to James's computer and began copying files while I kept watch by the door. The process seemed to take forever, with progress bars crawling across the screen as gigabytes of data transferred to our drives. "How much longer?" I whispered. "Almost done. He has over 5,000 patient files plus 3 years' worth of billing records." Sarah's fingers flew across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. "The fraud is extensive, Martin. He's been creating fake patients billing for procedures that never happened, even claiming reimbursements for equipment that doesn't exist." "Jesus, how much money are we talking about?" "Conservative estimate, $800,000 over the past 3 years. Sarah unplugged the USB drive and began shutting down the computer. Enough to send him to federal prison for 10 to 15 years. We were walking back toward the elevator when Sarah grabbed my arm. "Someone's coming." I heard it too. The ding of elevator doors opening, followed by footsteps in the hallway. We ducked into a supply closet just as a security guard rounded the corner, flashlight beams sweeping across the walls. My heart hammered against my ribs as we pressed against shelves full of medical supplies, Sarah's body warm against mine in the confined space. The guard checked several office doors, including James's, then continued down the hallway. We waited 5 agonizing minutes before Sarah deemed it safe to leave. By the time we reached her car, my hands were shaking with adrenaline. "That was incredible," I said as Sarah drove us out of the parking garage. "That was necessary." Sarah's expression was grim. "James thinks he's smarter than everyone else, that his medical degree makes him untouchable. Tonight proved him wrong." The rush of our successful mission carried over when we returned to Sarah's house. We made love with desperate intensity, as if the danger we'd shared had bonded us on a deeper level. Afterward, as we lay in James's bed surrounded by evidence of his crimes, I felt more alive than I had in years. But my euphoria didn't last long. Sunday morning brought a text from Emma that made my blood run cold. "Need to talk to you about something important when you get home. It's good news." I drove home with my stomach in knots, trying to prepare myself for whatever revelation awaited me. Emma was sitting at our kitchen table when I walked in, still wearing her pajamas, hands wrapped around a coffee mug. Her face glowed with an excitement I hadn't seen in months. "Martin, sit down. I have something wonderful to tell you." Emma patted the chair beside her, eyes bright with unshed tears. "I went to the doctor yesterday for my annual physical and—" She paused dramatically, clearly savoring the moment. "I'm pregnant." The words hit me like a physical blow. I stared at Emma's radiant face, calculating dates in my head with growing horror. 6 weeks pregnant, she said. 6 weeks ago was exactly when Sarah's evidence showed the affair with James had begun. "Are you sure?" I managed to ask. "Positive. Dr. Wilson confirmed it with blood tests." Emma reached across the table and took my hand. "I know we weren't trying, but isn't this perfect timing? We've been talking about starting a family and now it's happening." I looked at my wife's glowing face and felt nothing but cold rage. The timing wasn't perfect. It was devastating. There was no way to know for certain whether the baby was mine or James Richardson's without a paternity test, and I couldn't ask for one without revealing what I knew about the affair. "This is—" Unexpected, I said carefully. I know it's a shock, but I'm so happy, Martin. I feel like everything in our lives is finally falling into place. Emma squeezed my hand. I was thinking we should start looking at houses with better school districts. Maybe something closer to downtown so my commute isn't so long. Closer to downtown. Closer to James's hospital and their hotel rendezvous. I wondered if Emma was already planning how to continue her affair while pregnant with a child who might not even be my biological offspring. That night, after Emma fell asleep with her hand resting protectively over her still flat stomach, I texted Sarah. "We need to talk. Emergency." Her response came within minutes. "My place in 20 minutes. James is working late." I found Sarah waiting for me in her living room laptop open on the coffee table. She took one look at my face and poured me a double scotch. "What happened?" "Emma's pregnant." The words tasted bitter. 6 weeks along. Sarah's eyes widened, then narrowed with calculation. "The timing coincides exactly with when her affair with your husband began." I downed the scotch in one burning gulp. There's no way to know whose baby it is without a paternity test. Actually, there is. Sarah turned her laptop toward me, showing what appeared to be medical records. "I have access to more information than you realize, Martin." "What do you mean?" "Remember when I told you I had a friend at Emma's doctor's office? Dr. Wilson's practice uses an electronic medical record system that my company helped them implement when they moved to their new building last year." Sarah scrolled through screens of information. "I still have administrative access to their patient database." The implications hit me like a sledgehammer. "You've been monitoring Emma's medical records." "I've been gathering intelligence on both of them for months." James's credit card records showed charges at Dr. Wilson's office that corresponded with Emma's appointments. When I realized they were sleeping together, I started tracking everything. Sarah pulled up Emma's file. According to her records, she was seen for emergency contraception 6 weeks ago, the day after her first confirmed meeting with James. I stared at the screen, barely able to process what I was reading. Emergency contraception. The morning after pill, which means she was worried about becoming pregnant from unprotected sex. Sarah looked at me with something like pity. "When did you and Emma last have intercourse?" "Martin..." I thought back through the past 2 months, remembering Emma's sudden headaches and claims of being too tired for intimacy. 7 weeks ago? Maybe 8. Then the baby isn't yours. The room seemed to spin around me. Emma wasn't just cheating on me, she was trying to pass off another man's child as mine. She was planning to let me raise James Richardson's baby while continuing her affair behind my back. "I'm going to be sick," I said, rushing to Sarah's guest bathroom. When I emerged 10 minutes later, pale and shaking, Sarah was waiting with a glass of water and a cold washcloth. "I'm sorry you had to learn the truth this way," she said softly. "How long have you known?" "I suspected when the timing was announced. I confirmed it tonight after you texted." Sarah sat beside me on the couch. "Emma has been planning this deception for weeks, Martin. She's not the woman you thought you married." "Neither are you," I said, the words coming out harsher than I'd intended. Sarah's face hardened. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you've been manipulating me from the beginning. Watching me, researching me, planning every detail of our meeting. You have security cameras recording our intimate moments, access to medical records. You shouldn't be able to see keys to buildings you don't belong in." I stood up and walked to the window, staring out at Sarah's perfectly manicured backyard. "You're not just getting revenge on your cheating husband. You're orchestrating something much bigger. I'm protecting us both. By making me an accessory to crimes I don't fully understand." I turned to face her. "What else haven't you told me?" "Sarah, what other surprises are waiting for me in your master plan?" For a long moment, we stared at each other across the elegant living room. In the soft lamplight, Sarah looked beautiful and dangerous, like a predator who'd been pretending to be prey. "Emma doesn't deserve your loyalty," Sarah said finally. "Maybe not, but I'm starting to wonder if you deserve my trust. I left without kissing her goodbye, driving home through empty streets while my mind raced with questions and doubts. Emma was carrying another man's child and planning to deceive me about it. Sarah was manipulating me for purposes I didn't fully understand, and I was caught between them, no longer sure who was telling the truth about anything. When I got home, Emma was still asleep, one hand resting on her stomach. Looking at her peaceful face, I felt a complex mix of love, rage, and profound sadness. 6 years of marriage, and it had all been leading to this moment of complete betrayal. I went to the guest room and lay awake until dawn, staring at the ceiling and wondering how many more secrets were waiting to destroy what remained of my life. Monday morning arrived gray and drizzling, matching my mood perfectly. I'd slept maybe 2 hours, tormented by images of Emma and James together planning their future, while I remained oblivious. Emma was unusually affectionate at breakfast, touching my shoulder as she passed behind my chair, smiling that radiant, pregnant woman glow that made my stomach turn. I made an appointment with Dr. Wilson for next week, she said, buttering her toast with careful precision. I thought you might want to come with me. Hear the baby's heartbeat for the first time. The baby that wasn't mine. Sure, I managed. That sounds great. Emma kissed the top of my head before leaving for work, and I had to grip the edge of the kitchen counter to keep from throwing my coffee mug against the wall. The casual way she lied to me, the ease with which she played the role of loving wife, was almost more infuriating than the affair itself. I called in sick to work claiming food poisoning and drove to Sarah's house. I needed answers before I completely lost my mind. Sarah answered the door in a silk robe, her hair still damp from the shower. Martin, what are you doing here? We need to talk, now. I pushed past her into the foyer. I want the truth about everything you've been hiding from me. Sarah's expression shifted from surprise to wariness. She led me to the living room and poured herself coffee from a silver service set on the side table. What specifically do you want to know? Start with how long you and James have been separated. Sarah paused with the coffee cup halfway to her lips. What makes you think we're separated? Because no woman planning to save her marriage would seduce her husband's mistress's spouse and document it on video. You're not trying to win James back, you're trying to destroy him completely. I sat down across from her. How long, Sarah? 2 months. Sarah set down her cup with a soft clink. James moved out in August after I confronted him about the affair. So when you approached me at the coffee shop, you were already divorced. Separated. The divorce won't be final for another 4 months. Sarah's voice took on a defensive edge. James thinks he's going to come out of this with half of everything I've built. He thinks I'm too weak to fight back. And me. What am I in all this? Just a convenient weapon in your war against your husband. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, staring into her coffee. When she looked up, her green eyes were bright with unshed tears. You were supposed to be. But things got complicated. Complicated how? I wasn't supposed to fall in love with you. The words hung between us like a confession. I studied Sarah's face, searching for signs of deception, but her vulnerability seemed genuine. How do I know you're telling the truth now? Because I'm about to give up everything to prove it. Sarah stood up and walked to her laptop, which was open on the coffee table. I was planning to turn over all the evidence of James's fraud to the FBI this week. Hospital records, patient files, financial documents, everything we copied from his office. That's what we agreed to do. But I was also planning to leak the affair to the hospital's board of directors, the local medical association, and every journalist in Denver. Ruin James's reputation so completely that he'd never practice medicine again. Sarah's fingers hovered over the keyboard. Emma's name would be all over that story. Her clients would drop her. Her career would be destroyed. She'd be publicly humiliated. My throat went dry. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm willing to drop the public exposure if you want me to. We can turn James in for fraud and let the legal system handle him quietly. Emma's reputation stays intact, her pregnancy remains private, and you can walk away from this mess without anyone knowing you were involved. Why would you do that? Sarah closed the laptop and moved to sit beside me on the couch. Because I love you, Martin. Because what started as revenge became something real, and I don't want to hurt you any more than you've already been hurt. Before I could respond, we heard the front door slam open. Heavy footsteps echoed through the foyer, followed by James Richardson's angry voice. Sarah, where the hell are you? Sarah's face went white. He's not supposed to be here. He's supposed to be at the hospital. James appeared in the living room doorway, still wearing scrubs, his dark hair disheveled. He was taller than I'd expected, with the kind of commanding presence that probably served him well in operating rooms. His eyes locked on me, then on Sarah in her silk robe, and his face twisted with rage. So this is him, James said, his voice deadly quiet. This is Emma's pathetic husband. I stood up, adrenaline flooding my system. Dr. Richardson. Oh, we're being formal now. James stepped into the room, hands clenched into fists. After you've been screwing my wife for the past week? Your estranged wife, I corrected, and you've been screwing mine for the past 3 months. James's laugh was harsh and bitter. Emma told me you were clueless, but I didn't realize you were also a hypocrite. At least I waited until our marriage was over before I started cheating. Your marriage was over because you're a lying, stealing piece of garbage, Sarah said, standing up to face her husband. How's the fraud investigation going? James, have the FBI agents been by to visit? Yet. James went very still. What are you talking about? I'm talking about $800,000 in insurance fraud. I'm talking about fake patients and phantom procedures, and your little side business billing Medicare for equipment that doesn't exist. Sarah's voice was ice cold. I'm talking about federal prison, James. The color drained from James's face. You don't know what you're talking about. I have copies of everything. Patient files, billing records, financial statements, everything you thought you'd hidden so carefully. Sarah moved to stand beside me, and I could feel the tension radiating from her body. The FBI is very interested in doctors who steal from their patients. You can't prove anything. Actually, I can, and I will unless you agree to a very reasonable divorce settlement that gives me everything I'm entitled to and gets you out of my life forever. For a moment, I thought James might attack her. His hands were shaking with rage, and a vein pulsed visibly in his temple. But then he seemed to collect himself, that doctor's composure reasserting itself. You always were smarter than I gave you credit for, he said quietly. But you made one crucial mistake. What mistake? You assumed I cared about going to prison. James reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. Emma, darling. Yes, I know you're at work, but we have a problem. Your husband is here with Sarah, and they've been having an affair. My blood turned to ice as I realized what James was doing. He was burning everything down, taking all of us with him rather than facing the consequences alone. What? No. I'm not lying. They've been sleeping together for over a week. Sarah has security footage if you don't believe me. James's eyes never left mine as he spoke. I think you should come over here right now and see for yourself what your devoted husband has been doing while you're carrying his child. Hang up the phone, Sarah demanded. Oh, and Emma, you might want to bring a pregnancy test. I have some concerns about the paternity of your baby. James smiled as he ended the call. She'll be here in 20 minutes. You bastard, Sarah breathed. I told you I was smarter than you thought. James pocketed his phone. If I'm going down, I'm taking all of you with me. Emma deserves to know that her husband is just as much of a cheater as I am. The next 20 minutes felt like hours. Sarah paced the living room like a caged animal, while James sat in an armchair looking remarkably calm for someone whose life was about to implode. I stood by the window watching for Emma's car and trying to figure out how to explain myself. When Emma's silver Honda pulled into the driveway, my heart started hammering against my ribs. She walked up to the front door with quick, angry strides, her face a mask of hurt and fury. Sarah let her in, and suddenly the four of us were standing in the same room, years of deception and betrayal finally coming to light. Emma looked smaller than usual in her navy worksuit, but her eyes blazed with righteous anger. "Is it true?" she demanded, looking directly at me. "Have you been sleeping with her?" I opened my mouth to answer, but James beat me to it. "Oh, it's true. Sarah has video evidence if you'd like to see it. High-definition footage of your husband's infidelity." Emma's face crumpled. "How could you do this to me?" "To us, I'm pregnant, Martin. I'm carrying our baby, and you're cheating on me with this woman." "Our baby." The words exploded out of me before I could stop them. "Is it really our baby, Emma? Because the timing seems awfully convenient." Emma's face went white. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about your affair with Dr. Richardson. I'm talking about the fact that you got pregnant 6 weeks ago, right around the time you started screwing your book club replacement." "That's not... I never..." Emma looked frantically between James and me. "James, tell him that's not true." James stood up slowly, his expression unreadable. "Actually, Emma, there's something I need to tell you. Something about my marriage to Sarah." "What?" Emma's voice was barely a whisper. "We've been separated for 2 months. I moved out in August." James's tone was conversational, as if he were discussing the weather. "I never told you, because I knew you wouldn't continue seeing me if you thought I was available. You wanted the thrill of an affair, not a real relationship." Emma staggered backward as if she'd been slapped. "You're lying." "I'm done lying. To all of you." James looked around the room at the 3 people whose lives he'd helped destroy. "Sarah, your revenge plot worked perfectly. You got everything you wanted: evidence to destroy my career, video proof of Martin's infidelity to ruin his marriage, and enough ammunition to take me for everything I'm worth in the divorce." "James, stop," Sarah said, but he continued. "And Emma, your perfect plan to have your cake and eat it too has fallen apart. You can't pass off my baby as Martin's child anymore, and you can't continue our affair now that everything is out in the open." Emma sank into a chair, tears streaming down her face. "The baby might not be yours. It could still be Martin's." "No, it couldn't." I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshot Sarah had given me. "Emergency contraception. Emma, the morning after pill taken the day after your first confirmed meeting with James. The day after you had unprotected sex with him." Emma stared at the medical records, her face cycling through shock, denial, and finally resignation. "How did you get these? Does it matter?" I asked. "The point is, you've been lying to me for months. About the affair, about the baby, about everything." "I never meant for it to happen," Emma whispered. "James was charming and attentive, and he made me feel special. You and I had been growing apart, and I was lonely. So, you decided to cheat on me and then try to trick me into raising another man's child, Samus." Emma's sobs grew louder, but I felt no sympathy for her. The woman I'd loved and trusted had been systematically destroying our marriage while I remained oblivious. Sarah moved to stand beside me, taking my hand in hers. "It's over, Martin. All the lies, all the deception. It's finally over." James clapped slowly, mockingly. "Beautiful performance, Sarah. You almost sound like you actually care about him." "I do care about him." "You care about winning. You care about revenge. But love..." James shook his head. "You're not capable of love, Sarah. You're only capable of manipulation and control." "That's not true," Sarah said, but her voice lacked conviction. James turned to me, his expression almost pitying. "Did she tell you she's been watching you for weeks? Did she mention that she chose you specifically because her research showed you were vulnerable and easily manipulated?" My stomach dropped. "Sarah." "Martin, don't listen to him. He's trying to turn you against me." "She has a file on you," James continued relentlessly. "Psychological profile, financial information, daily routines, relationship history. She studied you like a lab rat before she made her approach. I looked at Sarah, searching her face for denial, but I saw only guilt and fear. Is that true? It's not what you think. Is it true? Sarah's shoulders sagged in defeat. Yes, but my feelings for you became real, Martin. Whatever else you believe, please believe that. I pulled my hand free from hers, feeling sick. You're all insane, every one of you. I walked toward the door, needing to escape the toxic atmosphere of the room. Behind me, Emma was still crying. James was laughing bitterly, and Sarah was calling my name. But I didn't stop. I couldn't stay in that house for another second without losing my mind completely. I drove aimlessly through Denver's suburbs, trying to process everything that had happened. My marriage was over. My wife was pregnant with another man's child. The woman I'd thought I was falling in love with had been manipulating me from the beginning. Everything I'd believed about my life was a lie. By the time I finally stopped driving, I was sitting in the parking lot of my office building, staring at the familiar glass facade and trying to figure out what came next. I spent the next 3 days in a hotel downtown, ignoring calls from Emma, Sarah, and even James. My phone buzzed constantly with text messages that ranged from apologetic to desperate to threatening, but I couldn't bring myself to read them. Instead, I sat by the window of my sterile hotel room, watching Denver's traffic crawl through the streets below and trying to figure out how to rebuild a life that had been completely demolished. On Thursday morning, Sarah appeared in the hotel lobby. I saw her through the elevator's glass doors as they opened on the ground floor, elegant and composed in a black business suit, waiting by the reception desk with the patience of someone who had all the time in the world. "How did you find me?" I asked when I approached her. "I know you better than you think I do." Sarah's smile was sad and knowing. "You always choose corner rooms with good views when you travel for work. The Hyatt has the best downtown views in your price range." Even now, after everything that had happened, she was demonstrating how thoroughly she'd studied my habits. It should have frightened me, but instead I felt a strange sort of admiration for her thoroughness. "What do you want, Sarah?" "I want to explain, and I want to make you an offer." We walked to a quiet coffee shop 3 blocks away, neither of us speaking during the short journey. Sarah ordered for both of us. She knew I preferred dark roast with cream, no sugar, and we found a corner table away from the morning crowd of business professionals grabbing their caffeine fixes. "James was wrong about one thing," Sarah said once we were seated. "I didn't choose you because you were vulnerable or easily manipulated. I chose you because you were good. Good people don't have affairs with married women. Good people don't usually find themselves in situations where their spouses are carrying other men's children." Sarah's voice was gentle but firm. "What I did was wrong, Martin. The surveillance, the manipulation, the way I orchestrated our meeting. All of it was calculated and unfair to you." "Then why did you do it?" Sarah stared into her coffee cup for a long moment. "Because I was angry and hurt and desperate for revenge. James had spent years making me feel worthless, and discovering his affair was the final humiliation. I wanted to hurt him the way he'd hurt me. By using me. By exposing him for what he really is, a fraud, a cheat, and a criminal." Sarah looked up at me. But somewhere along the way, something unexpected happened. "What? I fell in love with you. Real love, not the calculated emotional manipulation James accused me of." Sarah reached across the table but stopped short of touching my hand. "I know you have no reason to believe me, but it's the truth." I studied her face, looking for signs of deception. Sarah had proven herself to be an expert manipulator, but there was something different about her demeanor now. A vulnerability that seemed genuine. "Let's say I believe you. What's your offer?" "I'm willing to walk away from everything. The fraud evidence against James, the divorce proceedings, the plan to expose the affair publicly. I'll give it all up and start over somewhere else, if that's what you want." "Why would you do that?" "Because you asked me to choose between revenge and love, and I choose love." Sarah pulled a manila envelope from her purse. These are copies of James's medical records and financial documents. Everything needed to convict him of insurance fraud. I'm giving them to you. I opened the envelope and found hundreds of pages of evidence patient files, billing records, bank statements, even email exchanges where James discussed his illegal activities with accomplices. It was enough to send him to federal prison for decades. What am I supposed to do with this? Whatever you think is right. Turn it over to the authorities, use it to destroy James's career, or burn it all and let him get away with his crimes. It's your choice now. Sarah closed her purse. I'm removing myself from the equation. And Emma. What about her? Are you going to expose the affair, destroy her career along with James's? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Do you still love her, Martin? I considered the question carefully. Did I love the Emma who'd been lying to my face for months? The Emma who was carrying another man's child and planning to deceive me about it? Or did I love the memory of who she used to be before betrayal and deception poisoned everything between us? I love who I thought she was, I said finally. But that person never really existed, did she? No, she didn't. Sarah's voice was soft with sympathy. Emma has been cheating on you for over a year, Martin. James wasn't her first affair. My blood went cold. What are you talking about? Sarah pulled out her phone and showed me a series of photographs. Emma at restaurants with different men. Emma entering hotel rooms with strangers. Emma kissing someone I didn't recognize in the parking lot of her office building. How long have you known about this? I hired a private investigator to look into Emma's background after we started seeing each other. I wanted to know everything about the woman who was destroying my marriage. Sarah's expression was pained. There have been at least 3 other affairs in the past 18 months, maybe more. The photographs felt like physical blows. Emma with a colleague from her marketing firm. Emma with someone who looked like a client. Emma with a man I'd never seen before, probably someone she'd met online or at a bar. Your marriage has been over for a long time, Sarah continued. Emma has been living a double life while you remained faithful and devoted. The pregnancy with James's baby was just her latest deception. I set down the phone, unable to look at any more evidence of my wife's betrayal. Why are you showing me this? Because I want you to understand that leaving Emma isn't giving up on love. It's accepting that what you thought was love was actually just habit and denial. Sarah leaned forward. You deserve better than a woman who's been making a fool of you for over a year. And you think I deserve you, someone who manipulated me and used me for revenge. I think you deserve honesty. I think you deserve someone who sees your worth and appreciates your loyalty. Sarah's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I can't undo what I did, Martin. I can't take back the lies or the manipulation. But I can offer you something Emma never did, the truth. Before I could respond, my phone rang. Emma's name appeared on the screen, and after a moment's hesitation, I answered. Martin, thank God. Where are you? I've been worried sick. Emma's voice was strained with exhaustion and tears. I'm downtown. What do you want, Emma? I want to talk. I want to explain everything and try to work this out. Please come home so we can discuss this like adults. There's nothing to discuss. You've been cheating on me for over a year with multiple men. You're pregnant with James Richardson's baby, and you were planning to let me raise it as my own child. Emma was quiet for a long moment. How do you know about the others? Her question was an admission of guilt that hit me harder than any denial could have. She wasn't even going to try to lie anymore. Does it matter how I know? The point is, our marriage has been a sham for months, maybe longer. It doesn't have to be over, Martin. We can go to counseling, we can work through this. I made mistakes, but I still love you. No, you don't. If you loved me, you wouldn't have spent the past year sleeping with other men and lying to my face about it. The baby might still be yours. We could do a paternity test. The baby isn't mine, Emma. We both know that. You took emergency contraception after sleeping with James, which means you knew exactly whose child you were carrying from the beginning. Emma started crying again, but I felt nothing but exhaustion. I never meant to hurt you this much. But you did hurt me. Every time you lied, every time you cheated, every time you came home and pretended to be my loving wife while you were planning your next betrayal. I looked across the table at Sarah, who was listening to my conversation with an expression of sad understanding. I'm filing for divorce, Emma. Don't try to contact me again. I hung up before she could respond and turned off my phone. Sarah reached across the table and gently took my hand. I'm sorry you had to go through that. Are you, or is this exactly what you wanted to happen? Sarah's grip tightened. I wanted Emma to face consequences for her actions. I wanted you to see her for who she really is. But I never wanted you to be in this much pain. I looked at Sarah's face, trying to read the truth in her green eyes. She'd proven herself capable of elaborate deception, but something about her demeanor now seemed different, more vulnerable, more genuine. What happens now? I asked. That's up to you. I meant what I said about walking away from everything. I'll move to another city, start over, completely, never contact you again if that's what you want. Sarah's voice was steady, but I could hear the fear underneath. Or we could try to build something real together. Something based on honesty instead of revenge. How do I know you won't manipulate me again? You don't. Trust is something that has to be earned, and I know I have a lot of work to do. Sarah squeezed my hand. But I'm willing to do that work if you'll give me the chance. I sat there in the coffee shop holding hands with a woman who'd systematically destroyed my life while claiming to love me, trying to decide whether redemption was possible for either of us. Emma had shattered my trust in marriage and commitment. Sarah had shattered my trust in my own judgment. But maybe we could help each other learn to trust again. I need time, I said finally. I understand. Take all the time you need. Sarah released my hand and stood up. I'll be staying at the Marriott downtown if you want to reach me. Room 412. She left me sitting there with the envelope full of evidence against James and a decision that would determine the rest of my life. Turn in the evidence and watch Emma's lover face justice for his crimes, or let him escape consequences and focus on rebuilding my own future. As I walked back to my hotel, I realized the choice was easy. James Richardson had stolen money from sick people, destroyed multiple marriages, and left a trail of emotional devastation in his wake. He deserved to face justice regardless of how it might affect Emma. I called the FBI tip line from my hotel room and arranged to turn over all the evidence the next morning. Whatever happened between Sarah and me, at least one person in this mess would be held accountable for their actions. 6 months later, I was sitting in the same coffee shop where Sarah had first approached me, reading news coverage of James Richardson's sentencing on my tablet. Federal judge gives convicted cardiologist 12 years for insurance fraud. The article mentioned that Dr. Richardson had stolen over $900,000 from insurance companies and Medicare money that should have gone to legitimate patient care. Emma's name wasn't mentioned in the coverage, but her life had unraveled anyway. Word of her affair with a convicted felon had spread through Denver's marketing community, and her clients had quietly moved their business elsewhere. She'd been forced to sell our house and move in with her sister in Colorado Springs. The paternity test I'd requested through my divorce attorney confirmed what we already knew: the baby wasn't mine. I felt no satisfaction in Emma's downfall, only a profound sadness for the waste of what our marriage could have been. But I'd learned something important about myself through the wreckage of my old life. I was stronger than I'd ever imagined. The hotel coffee shop door chimed softly, and I looked up to see Sarah walking toward my table. She was wearing jeans and a simple sweater instead of her usual business attire, and her hair was shorter than I remembered. She looked different somehow, more relaxed, less calculating. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," she said as she sat down. "You said you had something important to tell me." "I do." Sarah ordered coffee from the passing waitress, then turned her attention back to me. "I'm moving to Portland next week. I got a job with a commercial development firm there." "Congratulations. I wanted to see you before I left." to apologize one more time for everything I put you through, and to tell you that these past 6 months of therapy have helped me understand how damaged I was when we met." I studied her face, noting the changes that suggested she was telling the truth about getting help. There was a calmness about her that hadn't been there before, a peace that seemed genuine. "I'm glad you're getting help," I said. "Are you, or do you think I'm manipulating you again?" The question was fair. Sarah had proven herself capable of elaborate psychological games, and I'd spent months wondering whether anything she'd told me was genuine. But the woman sitting across from me now seemed different from the vengeful wife who'd orchestrated our affair. "I think you're trying to become a better person," I said carefully. "Whether you succeed is up to you." "That's fair." Sarah smiled sadly. "I know I have no right to ask this, but I was wondering if you might consider giving us another chance. Starting over in a new city, building something real without all the baggage from our past." The offer was tempting. Sarah was intelligent and beautiful, and despite everything that had happened between us, I couldn't deny that I'd felt more alive during our brief affair than I had in years of marriage to Emma. But I'd learned hard lessons about trust and self-respect that I wasn't willing to ignore. "I can't do that, Sarah. Because you don't trust me. Because I don't trust myself. I let Emma lie to me for over a year because I was too comfortable, too complacent to pay attention to what was really happening. Then I let you manipulate me because I was angry and hurt and desperate to feel wanted." I met her eyes. "I need to figure out who I am when I'm not defining myself through relationships with other people." Sarah nodded slowly. "That's probably wise. But I want you to know that I forgive you. What you did was wrong, but I understand why you did it. James had destroyed your sense of self-worth, and you were desperate to feel powerful again." "Thank you for that." Sarah's eyes were bright with tears. "It means more than you know. I hope you find what you're looking for in Portland. I hope you find what you're looking for here." Sarah stood up and leaned down to kiss my cheek, her lips lingering just long enough for me to catch the scent of her perfume. Then she walked away without looking back, disappearing into the crowd of downtown pedestrians. I sat there for a while after she left, thinking about the strange journey that had brought me to this moment. A year ago, I'd been a complacent husband living a comfortable lie. Now, I was divorced, living alone in a downtown apartment, rebuilding my career and my sense of self from the ground up. The process hadn't been easy. I'd spent months in therapy working through issues of trust and self-esteem that had made me vulnerable to both Emma's deception and Sarah's manipulation. I'd learned to recognize the warning signs of toxic relationships and to value my own worth enough to demand honesty from the people in my life. My work at TechSphere had flourished once I'd started applying the same analytical skills I used in marketing to my personal relationships. I'd been promoted to senior marketing director with a team of 12 people reporting to me. For the first time in my career, I felt confident and respected by my colleagues. I'd also started dating again, though, carefully and with clear boundaries. Nothing serious yet, but I was beginning to believe that healthy relationships were possible if both people committed to honest communication and mutual respect. My phone buzzed with a text from my therapist, Dr. Patricia Henley. "Don't forget our session tomorrow. We're going to talk about your progress with trust and vulnerability." I smiled as I typed back my confirmation. 6 months ago, I would have been embarrassed to admit I was seeing a therapist. Now, I considered it one of the smartest decisions I'd ever made. As I walked back to my apartment, I reflected on the lessons I'd learned from the destruction of my marriage and my complicated affair with Sarah. Betrayal could destroy you, or it could teach you to become stronger and more discerning about the people you allowed into your life. Pain could make you bitter and suspicious, or it could help you develop empathy for others who were struggling with their own demons. I'd chosen strength over bitterness, growth over stagnation, hope over despair. Emma and James were facing the consequences of their choices: financial ruin, professional disgrace, and the knowledge that their actions had hurt innocent people. Sarah was trying to rebuild her life in a new city, hopefully with a better understanding of healthy relationships. And I was learning to be happy alone, which I'd discovered was the foundation for eventually being happy with someone else. 6 months from now, I might meet someone who would challenge me to open my heart again. Or I might continue building a life centered on my career, my friendships, and my personal growth. Either way, I knew I would never again settle for a relationship built on lies or accept treatment that made me question my own worth. The woman who approached me that morning in Brewster's Coffee had indeed changed my life completely. Not in the way either of us had expected, but in the way I needed. Most, she'd forced me to confront uncomfortable truths about myself and my marriage, and in doing so, she'd given me the opportunity to become the man I was always capable of being. As I unlocked my apartment door, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, genuine contentment with my own company and excitement about the future I was building for myself. Sometimes the best revenge against those who betray you isn't destruction or retaliation. Sometimes it's simply becoming too strong and self-aware to ever let anyone treat you that way again. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where betrayal forced you to become a stronger person? How did you rebuild your life after discovering that the people you trusted most had been deceiving you? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more real-life tales of overcoming adversity. And don't forget to share this with someone who might need to hear that it's possible to rebuild after betrayal and find genuine happiness on the other side of pain. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, you deserve relationships built on honesty, respect, and genuine love. Never settle for less than your worth.